much more so when you're told that the Torah is revealed, so goes tradition, without the vows to begin with. And the vows come in by human hand or by human mind, influenced by human activity, and then what do you do about it? That's part of the whole situation, you might say. Anyway, I'm looking at the book of Esther, and Esther itself seems to have two different stories. One is the story of the king Ahasuerus, whom we identify with Xerxes I, but we'll call him by the Hebrew name, so it is presented in the book, Ahasuerus. I'm looking at the name Ahasuerus. It is an aleph with a chata patach underneath it. Achash is the first syllable, Ve is the second syllable, and Rosh is the third syllable. I find it interesting that the marker of Ahasuerus has a little marker underneath the Resh letter in the printed Hebrew Bible to imply that maybe the accent should not be over the last syllable, but the second to last syllable, which is the tsere, open vowel, tsere, but a tsere, when it occurs in the word, normally attracts the accent. Ahasuerus, not Ahasuerus, Ahasuerus. Let me tell you what I mean. Let me write the word on the board. The word written or printed in the text I have in front of me. Now keep in mind, if this were Megillah, the text would not be vocalized. It's a printed book I'm looking at. Ahasuerus. Okay, so you see the aleph there as a chata patach under it. The chet has a chata closed by the shvanach and the shin. That's not an issue. CI and CVC is the first syllable. The second syllable has the tseir as a vav. Underneath the vav is a tseir. The tseir is one of the three medial vowels, and most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time, it attracts the accent. And if that's so, then I show you the accent marker like this. And the last syllable is CVC, long vowel close situation, but then we have a problem. A long vowel close should be accented. It's irregular. So maybe the accent belongs here. But as I look at my printed Bible here, I notice there's a marker underneath that tsere, or by that tsere, there's a marker that looks like this. Then the race continues, etc. This is a marker of the accent. I show it by that marker. The printed Bible, if you look at a printed Bible at home, if you have one in Hebrew, you'll sometimes see this little marker. It implies emphasis here, which implies that tsere, when it occurs, should be accented. But then what do you do with the Rosh? And the answer of all of this is the following. The word is not Hebrew. It's a borrowed word. Ahasuerus is not a Hebrew word. And once the word is borrowed, then everything opens up. That's the only explanation I can give you. What appears to be an accent over the tsere in my printed Hebrew Bible is probably so. Read it with the emphasis on the second syllable, but the accent also is demanded for the last syllable. So we get away with it by saying the word is borrowed, so don't worry about it. Anyway, Ahasuerus. But the accent mark is by the resh rather than by the tsere. So maybe it's that way of saying hit the last syllable. But then again, the mark is not found with other syllables where the accent is the last. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. Again, the printed Bible will have its own little markers, and as Baruch would testify, maybe these markers have to deal with reading the Megillah. That's why you have these little markers under the printed vowels. It's for the purpose of reading. It has nothing to do with accent from the point of view of grammar. Now what are you going to do? What if you have different reading styles?
You get
the
confused.
Moroccan and the Ashkenazi and this and that. Anyway, just something that a student doesn't have to be concerned about, but I'm just calling that to your attention. Anyway, we're told about this King Ahasuerus, Let me just read that first sentence of the book of Esther. That this is Ahasuerus who reigned from India into Ethiopia. Both countries or lands we mentioned this hour. India and Ethiopia. That's quite a distance. Over 120 provinces. 127 provinces. And in those days, King Ahasuerus sat on the throne of his kingdom, which was in Shushan the castle, in the 3rd year of his reign, etc. Okay, we're told that the king of the story is King Ahasuerus. We know him as Xerxes I. He's the 5th century pre-Christian history king of Persia. Next thing is, he had a tremendous empire. Next thing is, we're told that in the 3rd year of his particular reign of his empire, he decided to have a feast and to all his princes and his servants, and he basically called them all together. He ruled over what is called in Hebrew, Paras and Madai, Persia and Media. Persia and Media, nobles and princes came to the particular feast. The feast was to be held in the capital known as Susa, or Shushan Habirah. Shushan Habirah is what it's called in Hebrew. Shushan. Get down that name, Shushan. Shushan. I guess Shushan today will be Tehran, maybe. I don't know. Shushan Habirah. That word Habirah. And ain't that an interesting word? The word Birah is capital. That same word Birah is the Hebrew word for beer. B-E-E-R. Are you saying, Professor Garber, that the word Birah is both the word for capital, as in capital city, rather than capital as in capital in the sense of money, I guess, and the word beer? Yeah. Ain't that interesting?
I thought it was beer Shiva.
The book of Esther deals with drinking.
Deals with what?
Drinking. Only our book deals with drinking wine. And I'm playing upon the word Shushan Habirah, which is what it says here. I'm looking at the Hebrew. Yeah, it says Shushan Habirah. Now, when you say the word capital, meaning capital city, well, they translate it as Shushan the castle. Is that so? Okay, I'm going to translate what they have the translation Birah here as castle. I know Birah as capital city. Maybe that term capital comes in later on in history. And then that word Birah, where you emphasize the first syllable, Birah, rather than Birah. Birah is the Hebrew word today for beer. And the Persians of old are said to be the great beer makers. The finest beer ever, this comes from Iran, back in the day. It's just weird how these different elements of different periods of time are thrown together in Garber's classroom hour. No rabbi would talk this way. No academic has that insight that I give you in this classroom. And then with this get together, they basically are saying, where are the women at? As I'm paraphrasing. And then Vashti, the wife of King Ahasuerus, is told to bring the women over. He says, hell no. What are we, that stupid? You men are gushing over beer. You're gushing over wine. You're getting intoxicated. And you want the women to come and do what? Do a little hula hoop with you? Are you crazy? This Bible is supposed to be read by men. We women are going to not let you get away with this. Get drunk in your own terms. Leave us alone. Well, the men are sitting where the women are. They're not coming. King Ahasuerus, get rid of your Vashti. What the hell she think she is? Are you the king or you're not the king? And my two gentlemen sitting in this classroom, since I'm the only one that's married, you better understand that you know when you get married, you You have lost your independence. You think you own a house? Get out of here. You're the boss, make your own supper. Clean your own room. I sleep in the same room. You're not sleeping in my room. Get out of here. You have no idea what a woman does. They rule the house.
Spice up your life.
That's why you get out of that house quickly. Take a break. You need to have fresh air. I speak as one who's gone through 3 women, and each one of them had the same characteristic. Anyway, what's interesting about this name here, this is why I'm not questioning the historicity of the book of Esther, but it's full of narrative that somehow has a twist upon twist. The name Vashti, as I'm going back and forth as if I'm drunk right now, the name Vashti is clearly a derivative of the word to drink. The Hebrew word to drink is shin taf hey. We'll learn the verbs of the lamed hey, the lamed hey verb. A verb that ends with the letter hey belongs to the conjugational pattern, belongs to the lamed hey gizra. In the present tense, aniyatahu shoteh, aniyathi shotah, then the plural forms are shotim and shotot, and the shtot is the infinitive. Vashti has the shin and the tav of the word shotem. I have no doubts that her name, Vashti, has to deal with the narrative of a drinking bout. And this business of Ad Shelo Yada, until you don't know this thing, blessed Mordechai from Curse of Haman. Again, drinking banquets, whatever, is part of the story of Esther. And Esther is celebrated by children dressed up in carnival uniforms. You go to synagogue, you see people dressed up. It's like a carnival. How can you have a carnival atmosphere with a holiday that speaks of the complete extinction of the Jews? It's like a Halloween atmosphere. And that word, Kippur, the word Purim, look at the most solemn day of the Jewish year, Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur. And the association, the day of Kippur, Yom Kippurim, and the day of Purim. What are you trying to say? In your lifetime, in 1973, there was the Yom Kippur War. In our recent history, Simchat Torah, Shmini Atzeret, 2023, there was a Hamas attack. And within the last week, on Yom Kippur, or rather on Purim, on Shabbat, there was Israeli attack in Tehran. It seems to be with the holiday is the background and the attack occurs. You would not expect military activity on a sacred day. It's just the reverse. It's when you don't expect is when it happens. Every military person will tell you that. And it's so sad to have every synagogue and church now with guards outside. You can't go to any place of service anywhere anymore now without the security here. It's so sad. It's just unbelievable. It's unbelievable to find in an Orthodox synagogue in Israel, when I was there, men would, they carry their guns to synagogue. I said, what the hell are you doing? It's Shabbat. You have to do it. So what am I going to say? I can't speak, I'm not there. These people live this way, and that's how they live. and that's permitted. Anyway, I give you these little associations right now. So Vashti basically is exiled, so goes the story, and then the story kicks in with other things. So for example, I see the notion here. I'm looking at sentence number 8 of the book of Esther, chapter number 1. I read the English, and the drinking was according to the law. None did compel, so the king had appointed all the officers of his house as they should do according to man's pleasure. Again, the drinking was according to the dot. Vashtia kadat. That word dot is used here for the first time in the book of Esther. The drinking bout that was to take place in chapter 1 has the authority. It's according to the law, according to the dot. The word dot today is used for the word religion, but actually the word is not the religion. It's the legalism, I guess. So how is it that the word dot is today used in Hebrew for Judaism? Because I guess Jewish law, legalisms, is what dominates Judaism, not Jewish belief. Let me repeat myself. Not Jewish belief. Jewish belief is important, but it's the actions that come from that belief. It's actions that precede that belief. It's actions that are interwoven with that belief that characterizes what Judaism is. 613 what? Commandments? The commandments of Judaism are not 613 belief articles. Now, I read already 2 of them this morning. Thou shalt be fertile, and thou shalt not murder. The very first commandments are actions of life and life being taken. It's interesting how that word dot is entered in. And that word dot is clearly said to be a non-Hebrew word. Persian, if you want. I also find it interesting, sentence number 6 of the first chapter. The king's palace, there were hangings of white, fine cotton, and blue, bordered with cords of fine linen. White and blue decorations in the palace of the king. Do you see some connection with the state of Israel? The blue and white flag? I doubt if that's because of the king's palace in the book of Esther. I just find it interesting. Okay. I see another sentence here. Sentence number 13 of the first chapter. Then the king said to the wise men who knew the times, for so was the king's manner towards all that knew law and judgment. All that knew law and judgment. The word for law is the word dot, and the word for judgment is the word din. Din today in Hebrew is law. Dot today in Hebrew is religion. I find it interesting that the book of Esther has that Persian word dot alongside the Hebrew word din. For that word din, you have the word dayan, a judge. Okay, I'm looking at chapter 2. The theme of chapter 2, the king is looking for a queen. And before you know it, you've got all kinds of people running around. And then we're told a story about a certain Jew in Shushan the castle, whose name was Mordecai, the son of Yair, the son of Shimi, the son of Kish, a Benjamite. I then go on, who was carried away from Jerusalem with the captives that had been carried away with Jehoniah, king of Judah, who Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, had carried away. All right, let's go over this right now. I know I ain't gonna finish anything anymore. Let me just go over what is historically an inaccuracy for everybody sitting here. You all have the impression that Mordecai and Esther and Ahasuerus were all of the same period of time. You have the impression that Ahasuerus was probably Cyrus the Great. We already corrected that. Cyrus the Great is Cyrus II, as I mentioned to you before, and has nothing to do with the book of Esther. Cyrus II is called Cyrus the Great because he permits the Jews of the Babylonian exile to return somewhat, and they eventually built a second temple and that type of thing. The book of Esther, according to scholarship, is said to have taken place in that period of Xerxes I, whose period is 485 to 465. I mentioned to you about the Babylonian exile, and from this moment on, you're not going to be saying one exile. There were 3 exiles called the Babylonian exile. 597, 596, 587, 586 was the big one, and then 582 was the last one, with Gedaliah being killed. Keep that date in mind. I now look at the story of Mordecai. Sentence number 5 in chapter 2 of Esther. There was a certain Jew, Ishu di Hayab. That's the Hebrew. There was a Jew, Meshushan Abirah, Ushmo Mordecai. His name is Mordecai. Let's get down that name. This class deals with Hebrew, so I ain't going to go any further than that now. The word Mordecai. Watch the name Mordecai. Gotta have a pen that writes. I'm double checking the spelling of the name Mordecai. There's a reason why I'm doing that. I know how to spell his name. I want to double check the spelling of Mordecai. I definitely made an error. Mordecai does not have the aleph. It has just the yud there. Just as good. Mordecai. 1 second now. I'm getting too enthusiastic. Mordecai. Okay, you see that mem there? It has a kamatz under it. A shpa that follows a kamatz. Unless there is a dagesh chazak in the next letter, that kamatz cannot be a short kamatz. If a kamatz is followed by a letter which has a shpa under it, chances are the kamatz is a medial kamatz, and the resh, if you will, is a shvana. If it's meant to be a short kamatz, then the shva needs that letter is a shvanach. And the way to prove that, if you look at the dalet, it has a dagesh in it. That dagesh is not a dagesh chazak. If it were, then where's the vowel? That dagesh is a bega kefet dagesh, a dagesh kal. That's the beauty of knowing vowels. I see a dagesh in that dalet following a shva. I'm assuming the shva is a shvanach. So the dagesh is in the dalet following the consonant resh. The shvanach has no sound to it. And the kamatz is unaccented, so it's a short kamatz. More. And then you pick up C-I-N, C-V. C-I-N, shvanach, C-V, and the V here is a diphthong. You don't write C-V-C or something like that. That yud is a diphthong yud. I, Mordechai. All right, that's the point of Hebrew grammar. What makes the Mordechai name so unusual, we're told he's the son of Yair. We're told his grandfather's name is Shimei. I want to read the Hebrew. Ben Shimi, the Hebrew is better than rather than English. Ben Shimi, who's Ben Kish, the great-grandfather. And then we're told is Ishimini, the man on the right. The translation has it, a Benjamite, being from the tribe of Benjamin. And then I continue to read. Asher Haglami Yerushalayim, who was exiled from Jerusalem with the captives that were carried away with Yehonia Melech Yehuda. Asher Haglan Nebuchadnezzar Melech Bavel, carried away with the captivity of Yehonia by Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon. I'm looking at my chart. Yehonia, is that what the Hebrew says? It says Yehonia. I'm looking at the English here. Yehoiah gets transliterated as Jehoiakim. No, Jehoiakim, okay. And his period, 598 to 597. And the exile done by Nebuchadnezzar was the first exile by the Babylonians, and that was 598. I know you don't see the problem. Mordecai is identified with the first phase of the Babylonian exile. Let me try this again. Let me make sure I'm reading this correctly. Mordecai, the son of Yair, the son of Shimei, the son of Kish, a Benjaminite, who had been carried away from Jerusalem. Now the word who here, is this relating to Mordecai? Or is it being related to Kish? My three scholars, listen to me again. We're told a Jew by the name of Mordecai, the son of Yair, the son of Shimei, the son of Kish, a Benjaminite, who was carried away into exile with the captives of Yehoniah. If it's Yehoniah that carries into exile here, then chances are it's Kish. How much more so if Mordecai is during a period of Xerxes I, whose period of time is well after the Babylonian exile. I'm looking at the footnote here, and they actually raise this whole question. Is the exile referred to here referring to Mordecai or to Kish? To whom is the relative pronoun, meaning who was carried away? Is it referring to Mordecai or is it referring to Kish? That's what happens when you read a text. And I guess it will make sense that's not Mordecai who was carried away with the Babylonian exile. It was a great-grandfather by the name of Kish. Otherwise, it doesn't fit Xerxes. See what happens when you read a text? And then the other issue, and then I'm afraid I'm going to have to dismiss you. Listen carefully. We're told he brought up Hadassah. She's mentioned only once, Hadassah. He, Esther, who is Esther, his uncle's daughter. If Esther is his uncle's daughter, then Esther is a cousin to Mordecai. And then it says, for she had neither father nor mother, and consequently, and Mordecai took her for his own daughter. Let me read that whole sentence. He brought up Hadassah, that is Esther, his uncle's daughter, for she had neither father nor mother, and the maiden was of beautiful form, meaning Esther, and fair to look upon. And when her father and mother were dead, Mordecai took her for his own daughter. Let's try this one more time. Mordecai is not the uncle of Esther. Mordecai is an older cousin of Esther, who raised Esther as his daughter. Do you see how confusing this is? Is Mordecai part of the exile of 597? No. Xerxes is a whole 100 years later. Is Mordecai the uncle of Esther? No. He's a cousin. But he also raised her as his daughter. And you people are so damn confused about the book of Esther. Do you realize that Esther is not a Jewish name? Could I blow your heads right now? Mordecai is not Jewish.
That's my
Mordecai
name.
is M-A-R-D-U-K, Marduk. Oh no, don't say that. Please don't. the hero and the heroine of the book of Esther, and why God is not found in that book, is Marduk and Astarte. I don't believe this. You better.
So Mordecai was like.
That's why Esther ain't in the Bible of the Dead Sea Scrolls. That's why Esther is read by every Jew, atheist in particular. It has nothing to do with the Jewish religion. Just saying. Please don't dismiss us yet. Ladies and gentlemen, when anti-Semitism, hatred of the Jew happens, every God-blessed Jew, practicing or not, is a victim. God is removed. Your people, says the Moabites, I now identify with. And for my good friend Yirmiyahu, the prophet of record of the period of Xerxes is Jeremiah. You're linked to Esther. And let me end with one thing. I gotta tell it to you. The story of the extermination of the Jews in the book of Esther was on the first month, on the 13th day. The first month is Nisan. The 13th and 14th and 15th day of that first month, Esther committed herself to fasting. Those 3 days are the very nights of Passover. At the 12th month is when the extermination was to occur. That's what we're doing right now, the 12th month. But the actual decree to exterminate the Jews of Iran was during Passover. The 13th and 14th and 15th day of the first month, Esther said, let there be a fast. You don't fast on Pesach, says Baruch Haneli. You feast on these days. Yep, you enjoy your Passover.
Professor, you're having the soda, pouring soda?
You say what?
You're having a pouring soda?
I should have one. Yes, I am. I don't know.
Okay, because I was gonna say my rabbi's having one at
I'm sure
4:30.
you are.